Hi there, I'm Josh, and today we are talking about the GTX 960 in 2023. The GTX 960 released on January 22nd, 2015, with a base clock of 1127 MHz, a boost clock of 1178 MHz, a memory clock of 1753 MHz, at 2 gigs of GDDR5 RAM. It has 1024 shading units, supports up to DirectX 12, and has a TDP of 120 watts. So will this aging mid-range card hold up in 2023? Well, let's find out. Let's hop into the benchmarks. Starting off with Modern Warfare 3 at 1080p with FSR and performance mode at the recommended settings, we saw an average frame rate of 60 FPS, a 1% low of 46, and a 0.1% low of 10. So there was a little bit of stutter here and there, but the game ran very well throughout. I was surprised we were able to get 60 FPS out of this card, but thank you FSR, because you aren't going to get anywhere close to this without FSR unless you drop the resolution down to like 720p. Lies of P at 1080p with the low settings ran with an average frame rate of 68, a 1% low of 31, and a 0.1% low of 16. So talk about a very optimized game, because it still looks good at the low settings and we're able to get 68 FPS on an 8-year-old card. Counter-Strike 2 at 1080p with the lowest settings ran with an average frame rate of 136. Now, there were moments where it went down to 98 and other moments where it went up to 150. This is scraping the bottom of the barrel of playable, however, and it depends on the CPU you have if you will see even this frame rate. But for those of you that play CSGO, you know that the more frames, the better, and anywhere between like 200 and 300 is kind of the sweet spot, but this is just barely scraping 136. So you might have some issues playing this game. But not as many issues as Starfield. At 720p with 50% res scale at the lowest settings, we saw an average frame rate of 15, a 1% low of 12, and a 0.1% low of 12. So this is just completely unplayable. You're not going to be able to play Starfield on anything below like a GTX 1060, and even then that's scraping it kind of hard. So this wasn't really a surprise. But if we jump into some modern games that are a little bit less demanding, like Overwatch 2 at 1080p with the high settings, we saw an average frame rate of 98, a 1% low of 72, and a 0.1% low of 17. That's where this card still shines. If you're looking to play esports titles, then a GTX 960 probably still holds up if you're looking to play at 1080p. But even then, CS2 had some issues, so maybe it's time to get that upgrade. Diablo 4 up next at 1080p with the medium settings. We saw an average frame rate of 51, a 1% low of 44, and a 0.1% low of 40. So if you wanted to get a closer to 60 FPS experience, you could drop the settings down to low, but this is what Blizzard had chosen for me, and honestly, on a game like this, 50 FPS is perfectly playable to me, and there was no stutter to speak of or slowdowns, which is very nice, and makes the below 60 FPS average a little bit more bearable. Now, Resident Evil 4 at 720p with FSR Ultra Performance at the lowest settings ran with an average frame rate of 65, a 1% low of 24, and a 0.1% low of 5. So why didn't I bump up the resolution or take down FSR to performance or balanced mode at these lowest settings? Well, the reason why is because there are certain parts of the demo that run like crap on this machine. You're talking like 20 FPS, and then you're gonna have other parts that run at 80, which averages out to 65 FPS. So I actually would consider this game to be unplayable because of the 20 FPS scenes, but if you're willing to negotiate that a little bit, then you will see pretty decent frame rates in less populated areas and less indoor areas, but I consider this to be unplayable. So, would I recommend a GTX 960 in 2023? The answer is no. I consider a GTX 1060 to be the bare minimum to get into PC gaming these days, and even then you're going to see better performance on a 1650 or 1660 Super, but a GTX 960 is pretty much a non-starter. I think a 970 would be scraping it a little bit, but for esports titles and older games, you'll be fine. A GTX 980 should still run okay, and a GTX 980 Ti should run pretty good. So that generation in total isn't awful, but because it's such an old graphics card and games are becoming more and more demanding, and some would say less and less optimized, I can't recommend a GTX 960 because even with FSR in some games, it just won't run very well. The 2 gigs of VRAM really hold it back, and the performance of the card itself is also just not very good. But thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, like, subscribe, do what you usually do, and as always, buy yourself something nice. Post-editing Fox here. Just want to let you know I have an eBay account. The account name is PCNerd02, PCNERD02, where you can buy graphics cards that I've tested. I also have a Discord in the description down below, as well as a Patreon. Thank you so much.